All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Fall 2022 OPT Workshop. My name is Amy Soub, and I'm the Director of ISSS, also known as International Student and Scholar Services. And today we're going to talk all about how to apply for OPT, which is an opportunity for you to work once you graduate. So it's officially temporary employment authorization for after you have completed your program and all degree requirements to gain practical work experience by applying your academic knowledge to a position directly related to your field of study. OPT stands for Optional Practical Training. You don't have to do it, but it's certainly a great option for you to get more experience in working in the US once you graduate. You must apply with USCIS and be approved for OPT before working post-graduation. You do not need a job offer to apply for OPT. Some people think that they do need a job offer, but you do not. You can certainly apply, and then we'll talk more about how you can add your employment once you've been approved. Employment on OPT can be paid or unpaid. So even if you are unable to find a paying job, you can certainly do some volunteer work and be able to, get that experience, even though you're not being paid. It will also help you from accruing unemployment. But, we do want you to be cautious about labor laws. We don't want students to be taken advantage of in a position that they should get paid for. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. And OPT, as we mentioned, it's 1 year, so it's 12 months of work authorization. Students who are in STEM eligible fields can apply for an additional 24 months of work authorization. They must apply within 90 days before the end of their initial 12-month OPT period. So, we'll talk more about the deadlines for OPT, but if you are STEM eligible, and just be aware that not all STEM majors are eligible, but many are. So it just depends, you have to make sure that you are on that USCIS list of approved STEM fields that are eligible for the 24-month extension. And the ISSS team can help you with your OPT application when you're ready to apply. So it's very important to be in touch with us. And actually, you have to be in touch with us before you can apply. So one thing, since you are interested in applying for OPT, that means that you're nearing the end of your program here at Loyola. So there's some things you need to think about as you prepare for your graduation. First of all, you want to work with your academic advisor and the Records and Registration Office to apply for graduation. Make sure that you've completed all your coursework and actually submit a graduation application. Then you'll also want to make sure you clear any account holds you might have. So if you have any holds on your account and you have not cleared them, then later on, you may need to access your transcripts, your diploma, and they will not be released until those holds are cleared. And this could affect you if you're applying for your STEM extension or H-1B applications. Also, you want to make sure your address is updated in Locus. As a reminder, you're expected to update your address within 10 business days with our office, and this includes after you graduate if you are remaining in the US on OPT. You will get access to update your address in the SCVB portal once you're approved for OPT. So that's great. You'll be able to update your address with USCIS. However, we do want you to just make sure your address is updated in Locus as well. And then, if you're no longer a student, you won't have the student insurance, health insurance. So make sure you keep an eye on your health insurance coverage so that you have some sort of coverage once, after your graduation date. If you're working for an employer, they will likely have some insurance options for you, but you might have a period of time between graduation and when you start working, and you just want to make sure you're always covered in some way. So there's some scenarios you might want to think about. So what happens if? What happens if you forget to submit a graduation application? If that is your situation, make sure you contact your academic advisor and records and registration office right away to let them know that, you were late, you forgot, you didn't submit it, but you indeed are graduating. So that way they can, do what they need to do to get you all sorted out. What if you learn you need more time to complete your program? So if you think you're graduating and then all of a sudden you realize you are going to have to retake a class, or you miscalculated the classes you need, what you'll have to do is apply for a program extension through ISSS before your program end date. This is very, very important. The program end date on your I-20, should be aligned with the general expected time to graduate, but sometimes it can be less or more than what we project when we issue your I-20, because maybe you took some extra classes and you're finishing earlier, or maybe you needed more time for whatever reason and you're finishing later. In any case, make sure you apply for program extension before the program end date. Otherwise, it's just going to mess up a lot of things about your status. For example, you will likely have to apply for reinstatement, and that can take up to a year. And if you're already at the end of your program, you wouldn't be able to apply for OPT. So keep that in mind. It's very, very important. What if you failed a class in your final semester, or your GPA was too low to meet graduation requirements? Okay, so the consequences of this do depend on the timing and the status of your OPT application. Let ISS know immediately so that we can look at your situation and give you the best guidance. In the best case scenario, if your OPT hasn't been processed yet, maybe you just submitted it and it's pending, you can cancel your OPT application and do a program extension. In the worst case scenario, let's say your application has already been processed and approved, you can do part-time OPT or no OPT. But what's unfortunate about that is you may, if you're doing part-time OPT, it doesn't count towards employment. So you would be accruing unemployment. So hopefully that wouldn't be your situation, but that could happen if you're in that situation. Now, there are 5 actions you can take in your grace period. So your grace period is the 60 days after your program end date. That's called your grace period. In these 60 days, what you can do, you can either exit the US, begin another program at Loyola, transfer your CVIS record to another university, file a change of status to another visa category, or file for OPT. Those are the 5 actions that really you want to take. Now, there is a 6th action, which would be taking no action, and then you're out of status after your grace period ends, and you'll be accumulating unlawful presence. Definitely not an option you want to do. So be mindful of your options. And since you're here, you are probably going to choose to file for OPT, but just know that these are the other options available to you as well. All right, so in order to be eligible for OPT, you must have completed at least 1 full academic year of study, and we are counting fall and spring semesters only. If you're on the semester system, Quinlan graduate students are on the quarter system, so you'll need to have completed at least 3 quarters. The position that you work in must be directly related to your field of study. You must have maintained good immigration status and good academic progress. You cannot have done more than 12 months of full-time CBT. And you do get 12 months of full-time OPT for each higher degree level earned. So it's really a great opportunity. If you, for example, are completing your bachelor's right now, you can do OPT for 1 year and then matriculate into a master's program. Once you finish your master's, you can do another year of OPT. And then if you decide to go on to your doctorate, you can do your doctorate and do another year of OPT. So just be mindful of that. And if you qualify for the STEM extension, you could do the STEM extension for each of those degree levels. So you might be wondering, when should I apply? So it is best to apply as soon as possible, as soon as you are eligible to apply. So you can file for your application up to 90 days before your program end date. So you'll want to look at your official program end date. So generally it's the last day of final exams in your final term, or the day of your dissertation defense if you're a graduate student. We'll want to make sure that that program end date on your I-20 reflects that end date, and in that case, 90 days before that program end date, you can begin applying. You can also apply 60 days after your program end date, so within that grace period, as we talked about. USCIS can take up to 3 to 4 months to process your application. That is kind of the official timeline that they put on their website, and it's really advised to apply early because, one, it can just take time, and then it could eat into your OPT work time. But also, if there's any errors with your application and you have to reapply, then you'll have time to reapply. If you apply at the last minute, let's say you apply in the last 5 days of your grace period, and then there's an error and you need to reapply, you'll be outside of your grace period, you won't be eligible anymore. Also, I want to let you know, we'll talk a bit about this throughout the presentation today. In the past, not too long ago, you could only apply by mail, and that's how everyone applied. And I believe that's part of why it also took a lot longer to process. Now, in the past year or two, there's been the option to apply online, and USCIS really recommends that students apply online, and it is a lot more efficient because you're able to catch errors mostly in the beginning. And it's just easier for them to process. So we've seen students get approved for OPT even within a week, which is unbelievable. So, you know, it's up to you if you want to apply by mail or online, but definitely there's a lot of benefits to applying online. We do have a link here to our OPT instructions and application form. So we can share this with you later and you can access it there. All of our forms are also on our website. There's a couple of things we'll be updating about them soon, but everything we talk about today is most up to date. All right, so the application process overview. First thing you want to do is attend an OPT workshop. So congratulations, you are here. And then you want to complete the Loyola OPT request form. After that, receive your I-20, because what we need to do is we need to, look at your OPT request, and we need to create a new I-20 for you that has an OPT recommendation on it. And you need that I-20 with the OPT recommendation in order to apply through USCIS. Now, some students don't realize this. They apply to USCIS before getting that I-20. They just use, the I-20 they have, and you'll get denied. And what's most unfortunate, if you still have time, besides the fact of still having time to reapply, but it costs about $410. You lose out on those $410 when you make an error in your application and have to reapply. So you'll have to pay that again. So make sure you get that I-20 from ISSS with the OPT recommendation before you apply to USCIS. Another piece that we really encourage students to do is when they send the OPT request to ISSS is to also send a copy of the I-765 form that you filled out so that we can make sure that you're filling it out correctly. I'll talk more about that in a moment. So you get the I-20 from us and gather supporting documentation, and then you submit your application to USCIS. So really these 4 steps: come to the workshop, complete the Loyola request, get your new I-20, gather your documentation, and submit to USCIS. All right. Here's another visual of the OPT timeline regarding when you can apply, when you can work, and what happens after. So the application period, as we mentioned, is as early as 90 days before your program end date, up to 60 days after your program end date. That's the application period. Now you'll see here on the bottom is your program end date, and then you need to select your OPT start date. The OPT start date must be within 60 days of your program end date, which is your grace period. So you can start the day after your program end date, or you could start the day before the end of your grace period, or anywhere in between. And then OPT is 12 months. After that, you have another 60 days grace period. However, remember, if you are applying for the STEM extension, you must do that before the end of your OPT. So you might be wondering, well, when should I start my OPT? That's kind of a difficult decision. And some things you might want to think about is if you have a job already lined up and you know that they can get you working the day after your graduation, then perfect. You can put an earlier start date. If you think, it's going to be more challenging to find a job and you're going to need more time, then you'll want to put a later start date. If you're graduating at the end of fall semester and you've got the holidays in there, you might want to keep that in mind because people may not have you start during the holidays, and there will certainly be a period of time where people are just not working or closed, depending on the profession you're going into. So let's see here. Yeah, so this just kind of gives an idea of, if someone, so this is a sample. Let's say someone's program end date is May 4th, so they can apply as soon as February 3rd or as late as July 3rd, and then they select their program start date as May 4th. Okay. Yeah, so this is just kind of some dates to give you a visual here. All right, so there are a lot of different documents you need to gather for your OPT application. These are the documents you'll need. So the one that's highlighted here, the first one is the OPT application form. That's the one with Loyola for you to get your OPT I-20. You'll also need the form I-765. So that's the one that you can find on the USCIS website. And you will fill that out as perfect as you can. That's the one that we recommend sending to us for review. Now, what's a little challenging is that there's the PDF version if you were to mail your application, and then there's the online version, which you will essentially create an account for the I-765 online, and that online account is your I-765 application. We cannot review that for you because it's all online under your username and login. So what I would suggest is, even if you're applying online, fill out the PDF I-765 for us to review. That way you can refer to it when you're filling out the online application. Form G1145, that's if you're mailing your application. It allows USCIS to contact you through text messages or email and give you updates on your application. If you're filling out your application online, you will likely not need to upload that form. You'll just, there'll be some sort of certification within the online application that you are allowing them to contact you. And essentially, because you are applying online, you'll already have your email and contact information in your profile. All right, so you will have to submit the copy of your new I-20 with the OPT recommendation issued to you by Loyola. You're going to have to send a copy of all I-20s issued for previously approved periods of CPT or OPT. So if you've done CPT or OPT at any point in your academic career, even if it was before Loyola, make sure you provide that. You will also submit a copy of your I-94, copy of your passport photo page, your F1 visa stamp, and then if you're mailing your application, you will submit a personal check, cashier's check, or money order payable to U.S. Department of Homeland Security for the I-765 filing fee. You will also need to submit 2 passport style photos, print your name and I-94 on the back in pencil. If you are applying online, you will actually upload photos. Make sure you follow all of the guidelines, and it should tell you once you upload it whether it's accepted or not. And as far as paying the fee, you can pay by credit card if you're paying online. A copy of your previous EAD card if you have ever had an EAD card previously, and then a copy of your I-797 notice of approval if you have one, if you've worked previously. So those are all the documents you'll have to get together. This is what the PDF version of the I-76 form looks like. It's actually 7 pages, and they do update it occasionally. They updated it a few times in the last 2 years. So you always want to make sure you get the one that's on their website. But this is kind of how it looks like. You'll fill out your biographical information. There's a part where it'll ask your address. If you don't know your address, you want to make sure you put down an address that you can trust to be there when your EAD card arrives, and you can put in care of. So if you don't know where you'll be living whenever you're expecting your EAD card to arrive, then you can put in care of someone you trust, and they'll be able to collect it for you. One of the important things is they will ask, why you're applying for why are you filling out the I-765 form, and that's where it says C3B. So C3B means you're applying for post-graduation, post-completion OPT. So that's the code you'll put in this box. Then you will, if you are mailing, you will sign in pen by hand. So you do need to print and sign it in pen by hand. There's a couple pages. If you have an interpreter filling this out, all of you, speak and understand English, so you just won't fill out those pages regarding the interpreter. On the last page, it asks about additional, previous CVIS IDs, CPT, or OPT. So if you've ever had a previous CVIS ID, you've had CPT or OPT, please mark that down on that last page. And then, as I mentioned, you'll be providing additional copies of those I-20s as well. So this is for the paper form. This has been transferred to an online form, and so it asks very similar questions. For example, they might ask if you are using an interpreter, and you'll say no, and then it'll just skip over that whole section that you're not filling out if you're doing it by hand. All right, so these are some tips from USCIS directly. They want you to complete your form accurately, so make sure everything is as perfect as possible. Don't forget to sign your form. If you are submitting by mail, it will be rejected. Use the most current form version, so go directly to the website, complete the entire form. If you handwrite your answers, use black ink. Make sure everything is neat and legible. But I think if you are going to do the application through mail, then you can just type in the PDF as opposed to writing by hand and just sign your name. Do not use highlighters or correction fluid or tape. They use scanners and they won't properly read the information. If you make an error, just start over with a clean form. If you're filing multiple forms, write your name, date of birth, and a number exactly the same way on each form. Pay the correct fee. So just double check what the fee is. You never know if it's going to change from today. And if you are mailing, send single-sided copies of the application. So don't print it double-sided. All right, so the new online I-765 form is really currently only for F1 students. So the I-765 form is used for many different reasons, but for the students applying for OPT or STEM, they're able to use the online form. I imagine in the near future, they will open it up to others as well. You'll create an account on USCIS using this link. Follow the instructions to upload the required documents. As we said, it is faster and more efficient. And for those who applied by mail and then they maybe have to submit additional documentation, they do say it's possible to transfer the application that's been done by paper to online, but I would just go with one and stick with it if you can. And then these are just examples of the G1145. It's a very simple form. You just fill out the bottom, giving permission to contact you through email or phone. And then the I-94 you should all be familiar with, but this is just a visual to remind you. And that essentially is letting USCIS know the last time you've entered the US and that you've entered on an F1 visa. Okay, so we mentioned the steps to apply. So first, you want to attend the OPT workshop, fill out the Loyola OPT application and send it with your I-765 to ISSS@luc.edu for review. Our team will provide feedback via email. Once your application has been reviewed, we will create your OPT I-20. We'll send it to you once it's ready. Do not submit your application to USCIS until you've received your OPT I-20 from our office. Compile the required documents for your application, and then save or make a photocopy of your application for your records. Then mail your application or submit it online to USCIS. You must submit your application within 30 days of issuance of your OPT I-20, or your application will be denied. This is a very, very important piece of information. So you've gotten the OPT I-20 from ISSS. You have to apply within 30 days. If you don't apply within 30 days and you use that same I-20, you will be denied. So if you get the OPT I-20 and for whatever reason you don't apply within 30 days, let us know. We'll create a new I-20 for you with an OPT recommendation. And the thing is, it doesn't show on the I-20 when it was issued, but the system knows and USCIS knows. So just be very, very mindful of that. All right, so as I just mentioned, USCIS must receive your application within 30 days of the I-20 issue date if you're mailing, but also if you're applying online, it needs to be within that time frame. If you're mailing, make sure you mail to the correct USCIS mailing address. So you'll see I did put the latest addresses here, and they are located in Chicago. But always just double check on the website, make sure there's been no changes, and check or money order our preferred payments for the fee if you're paying by mail. So this is because, let's say, because there is the option to put down your credit card information, but if for whatever reason your credit card denies the charge, maybe they think it's fraudulent, for whatever reason, if your credit card denies the charge, then once again, your application will not go through. So you don't want that to happen to you. Even checks, I mean, you want to make sure you have plenty of money in the account. Money order really is kind of the best because it's almost like giving cash. But in any case, if you are applying online, you don't have to worry about that because you'll be there processing your credit card in the moment and you'll know that it went through. So if you apply by mail, you will receive an I-797 notice of action or receipt notice within 2 to 3 weeks. That's kind of the general time frame. They have been a lot longer during COVID, but I believe they're more in line with that now. Online applications will give you an immediate receipt notice. You'll be able to check your case status online with the receipt number. And if you notice any misspellings or address mistakes, make sure you contact customer service right away so they can correct those. And let ISSS know right away if your application is returned to you, because this way we want to work with you to look at the next, what are the next steps we can take? Do we need to give you an I-20, whatnot? You'll also want to notify ISSS if you receive a request for evidence. So you may be in a situation where they're willing to give you, willing to proceed with your application as long as you provide this additional documentation. Oh, and then this on the right is just an example of an I-797 notice of action, and on the top left is the receipt number. Okay, so what comes next? So let's, once you're approved for OPT, you will receive an EAD card in the mail. Another thing to be mindful of is that if you have a Social Security number already, you'll let them know in the I-765 form. It asks if you have a Social Security number, and you can mark yes. If you don't, you can mark no, and it asks if you want a Social Security number, and then you would say yes, and you'll fill out the information so that once you're approved for OPT, you'll also receive a Social Security number. You must have your EAD card and reach your OPT start date before you can start working on OPT. Okay, so do not start working until you have that EAD card in your hand and that start date has approached. Take note of the dates. So the dates that are on your EAD card could be different from your desired OPT start and end date. Now, generally speaking, if you apply with plenty of time, you should get the dates that you want. But if you apply late, or USCIS is just very late getting to your application, then what they'll do is they'll have a later start date so that you can take full advantage of that year. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you graduate December 15th and you put your OPT start date as December 20th. But then with the holidays, USCIS processes your OPT after January 1st. So they're not going to put December 20th as your start date anymore, because it's already passed and you haven't been able to work. So they would probably put January 2nd or 3rd, just some date in the future so that you can take full advantage. If you're late though, let's say you apply right at the end of your grace period, well then, let's say it takes USCIS a month to process, then they'll just give you probably the date that they process would be your start date, and then you get the EAD card 5 days later, and OPT will actually start a month into your 12-month period, and you'll only get 11 months of OPT. So that's just only if you apply super late. All right, so some reminders about what you can do on OPT. You must find work within your field of study. As we mentioned earlier, you do not need a job in order to apply for OPT, but you do need to find a job once you've, been approved for OPT, and it must be within your field of study. You also need to work at least 20 hours per week. So you can work less than 20 hours per week, but if you work less than 20 hours per week, then it does not count towards employment. And you have 90 days of unemployment on OPT. This is just really important for you to know. So anything 20 hours or more can count towards employment. Anything less than 20 is considered unemployment, even though you are eligible to work less than 20. You can work multiple jobs too, but at least one job has to be at least 20 hours to be counted towards employment. Paid or unpaid work is okay. So that means if you do some sort of volunteer work, that could be considered employment, and it should be at least 20 hours per week, once again, to qualify. So, if you think it could be a challenge to find a job, a paid job, you may want to look into some unpaid options that would not go against any labor laws that you could do maybe till you find a paying job. Because you definitely want to avoid accruing the 90 days of unemployment. If you do reach the 90 days, you should exit the US at that point. Now, you'll want to start thinking about that before you reach the 90 days so that you don't go over 90 days, but also, there may be some other options for you. Maybe you can transfer your CVIS record or pursue another degree if that's an option for you. So there are some options for you to remain in the US, but you would have to make those decisions before that 90 days come. All right, so once you do find a job, you want to make sure to report any new or updated employment to the ISSS team using the form that's linked here, which is the OPT reporting form. Please also notify us if you change addresses, are approved for a change of status, or if you permanently depart the US, because we need to update your record accordingly. Any changes you'll want to let us know about within 10 business days. Oops. All right, something happened here. Let me, one moment, sorry. Okay. Okay, so I just had, hopefully you're all still seeing this. I just had a photo here of an EAD card, so you can see a little bit what that looks like. All right, now the STEM extension. So students who are eligible for the 24-month STEM extension should keep the following in mind. The STEM extension is a separate application that must be filed with USCIS, and you can access the instructions in the form there. then you can apply for your STEM extension up to 90 days before the end of your 12-month OPT period. Your application for the STEM extension must be received by USCIS before your 12-month OPT period expires. When applying for the STEM extension, your employer must be enrolled in the E-Verify program. Contact your employer to see if they are enrolled. That's very, very important. As long as you apply for the extension before your 12-month OPT period ends, you may continue working while the application is pending. And just be aware that if you are working for Loyola and you're looking to do a STEM extension, we are not enrolled in E-Verify. So you will not be able to do the STEM extension with Loyola. So make sure you contact your ISSS advisor or email isss@loyola@luc.edu when you're ready to file for your STEM extension, and we'll help you through that process. You will receive another I-20 with a STEM OPT recommendation on there, which you'll use to apply for the STEM extension. Okay. Oops. So traveling on OPT, we do not recommend traveling while your OPT application is pending with USCIS, because you've completed your program. Well, if you're in your grace period, if you must travel during this time, note that you cannot re-enter the U.S. without your EAD card. So after you receive your EAD card, make sure you carry the following documents when you're traveling. You want to carry your most recent I-20 signed for travel by ISSS on page 2 within the last 12 months, your valid US F1 visa, your valid passport, your EAD card, and a job offer letter or proof of employment if you have it. It's much better if you do have proof of employment before traveling and re-entering. If your visa has expired and you plan on traveling outside the US, you will need to renew it at a US embassy when you are out of the country. So make sure you leave plenty of time before travel to get a new visa. After your OPT period ends, you have a 60-day grace period in which you can stay in the US. During this time, you can transfer your F1 record to another institution. Make sure you work with the ISSS team if you are interested in doing this. Start a new program at Loyola. Depart the US. So yeah, those are really your options here. If you are eligible to apply for the STEM extension, as we mentioned, you must apply before your OPT end date. I think you all got that point pretty clearly, but okay. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to end the recording. So thank you all for listening, and we will, first I'm going to end the recording. So thank you all for being here, but please don't go anywhere yet.